I'm joined by Mick Keogh, the Commissioner of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, or the ACCC. So Mick, last September the ACCC announced a market study into the Australian wine industry, focusing on competition, contracting practices, transparency and risk allocation in the wine grape supply chain. How did this study come about?
It probably came about largely because a lot of contacts have been made with the ACCC over quite a period of time, raising various competition issues in the wine sector and the wine grape sector. So the ACCC runs a series of what we call market studies. We've done them into electricity, we've done them into gas, we've done them into beef and dairy. So the ACCC, as a response to those contacts we've had from the industry, launched this more detailed study into how the industry operates.
The ACCC released an interim report in June, which produced interim recommendations on quality assessments, price transparency, payment periods, the voluntary code of conduct and contracting practices. Tell us more about that.
Well, the big issue from our perspective that was raised with us revolved around competition at the farm gate for wine grapes. The restrictions that are in place that prevent that competition occurring, or in fact the situation where there's very little competition. There was only perhaps one or two buyers in a particular region accounting for the bulk of the grapes produced. Our concern is that that lack of competition means that the signals that get to growers are very mixed, and the incentive growers have to improve their productivity, improve the quality of their production are also distorted, and that has a long-term implication for the industry. So particularly when we look at a situation where water, as we know, is very limited and being fought over by the various products that are produced from irrigation. So for growth to occur in the wine industry, it's going to be very important for growers to invest the capital required to improve their water utilisation, to improve their water efficiency, and also to grow the better quality grapes that are required for the higher value markets that everyone's talking about. So that investment by those growers is very much dependent on the confidence they have that they're getting the right signals out of the market. Why would you invest tens of thousands of dollars per hectare in upgrading a vineyard if you're not at all certain how many years you'll have a contract, what price that might be? So it's a very basic thing that unless the market's operating well, the incentive to actually take that investment decision is diminished, and therefore the potential growth of the future of the industry is limited. So we see competition at the farm gate as a very important element in bringing about that change in the industry, and we recommended a number of measures to try and improve that.
Some defence of the wine industry's payment methods are that the product takes a long time to come to market. Do you feel that defence is justified?
Well, I don't, and certainly we are yet to be convinced that that is the case. We look around at a range of other agricultural commodities, from grains to wool to cotton. They all have long supply chains before they get to the market and be converted to consumer dollars. Grapes in that respect are no different. Sure, the industry's had this practice in place for a long while, but in reality, the large multinational winemakers are much better positioned to access finance and to finance the inventory of the industry than are individual growers. And again, it gets back to that issue we talked about before. If we want growers to invest in the infrastructure on farm that they need to improve their productivity, they can't have all their money tied up waiting for payments to come back from the industry. So it just makes sense from an efficiency perspective that the large winemakers in particular are the best place to get the cheapest finance to finance the inventory, and therefore the practice of relying on growers to provide 12 months finance for the industry just isn't efficient and is going to have limitations into the future.
What has the feedback been from the industry on the market study and on the interim report's findings?
We've had some mixed feedback. I think there's a general consensus around the industry that there's not a desire to move to a mandatory code, in other words, to introduce some form of regulation. I think certainly the wine grape growers have said to us, yes, they agree on payment terms. Yes, their big issue is the uncertainty of quality assessments. I think the pricing issue is a tricky one. Getting pricing publicly announced has upsides and downsides, and whether that's an advantage or not, to have a much more public price announcement, a la the dairy industry, I think the jury is out on that one. But certainly on the payment terms and the quality assessment, we've had very strong support from growers and some winemakers that those issues certainly do need addressing.
The ACCC has found quality assessment methods are very subjective. What can the wine industry learn from the wool industry, for instance?
Well, it was very interesting to me, having come through the wool industry over the last 30 years, where the wool industry went from, well, you can never measure quality. It's not something you could ever objectively measure, to a situation now where the wool industry is totally reliant on objective measures of quality. And in fact, if you look at the quality improvements that have occurred in the industry over that period, they've been enormous. So wool is now of a much higher quality, a much finer micron than it was 20 or 30 years ago. And then to see those exact same arguments now being played out in the wine industry, where, oh no, you can't measure objectively the quality of grapes. Oh, but we do measure VOMA, we do measure colour, we do measure some things, but they'll never be able to do it properly. And it seems to me that if you really do want growers to improve the quality of their grapes and make consistent changes, then you have to send them accurate signals, and you'll only do that if you've got objective measurement that people are confident in when you deliver your grapes to the vineyard. So it's very reminiscent of the wool industry, and I think there's a lot of advantage to the grape and wine industry to have much more objective assessments of quality through the supply chain.
So, what's the next step?
Well, we're engaged heavily in talking to all the industry stakeholders again, getting their reaction to the recommendations in that interim report. We'll bring that back together and consider in the light of those responses, and our aim is to have that final report available in September. Then it'll be up to the government to decide whether it needs to take action or whether it's up to the industry to resolve some of the issues that we identified.